Welcome back to Community Matters. We're talking about domestic violence and abuse with Lee Dukey and Dr. Stephanie Francis with InterAct. There's more to the different kinds of abuses, and so let's talk about I think there's 4 more.
We typically, as we sort of break them down into some of the broad categories, there are. So we also recognize that isolation is an abusive tactic that perpetrators use, both physical and social isolation. Financial abuse, making sure that victims and survivors don't have access to money and other resources. There's sexual abuse that occurs within intimate partner relationships, and that there's often spiritual abuse, which is sort of utilizing one's faith beliefs and belittling that, or preventing folks from engaging in spiritual practices, or forcing folks to engage in spiritual practices, or utilizing text, tenet, or various religious beliefs to kind of excuse and try to make the argument that the abusive behavior is okay. So, and these forms of abuse can be present in all forms of abuse can be present in an abusive relationship, or primarily 1 or 2 form can be, but it all falls under that umbrella of an abusive relationship if one partner is using these tactics to strip power and control away from their partner.
Well, see, and I know a lot of viewers are going, well, they may not even recognize that this is going on because it becomes such a part of the daily life. Now, when we talk about physical violence, and I've often wondered this, and I know many people have, how does a person stay in that kind of relationship? Why haven't you left long before? Why do you stay and be beaten day in and day out? Any idea, any answer to that?
Well, we would like to suggest that there's a different question to ask. And that question is really more about why does the abuser continue to abuse the person? Stephanie, do you want to address that?
Yeah. So what I would say is, when we ask the question, why doesn't she just leave, or why doesn't the victim just leave, what we're really doing is we are placing the responsibility on the wrong party in the relationship.
Sure.
So what we really need to be asking is that, why does the perpetrator engage in those behaviors, and why do we as a community in many ways fail to address that behavior? When we ask that question, why doesn't she just leave, then instead of holding the perpetrator responsible for stopping the abusive behavior, we're holding the victim or survivor responsible for figuring out how to avoid being abused. And that really does put the responsibility sort of in the wrong place. Now, that being said, I will say that oftentimes the best option for a victim or survivor to be safe is to get out of that relationship. And services like InterAct are there to try to help support that. But it is important to note that that is not an easy decision to make. It is not an easy process to go through. And that's one of the things that we talk about as well, is that I mentioned it earlier, leaving is a process, not an event. And so we need to recognize when we sit back and question why a victim or survivor hasn't left yet, we need to understand that there are lots of barriers that make it very difficult to leave. Leaving a relationship at all is challenging. And in most cases, the victim or survivor loves their partner, they want this relationship to work, they want to keep the family together. So although they want the abuse to end, they may not be ready for that relationship to end. They want to try to have that relationship without the abusive component, if at all possible. And then there's just lots of barriers to try to get out. We talked about financial abuse is present. Well, if you don't have access to resources and money, it can be very difficult to do that. Cultural issues, religious issues, commitment to the marriage. There's lots of things that can make it very difficult for an individual to leave. And one of the most important things that we need to recognize is fear. It can be very scary to try to leave an abusive relationship, and one of the reasons why is that the most dangerous time for a victim or survivor is when they are taking steps to leave or after they have left. Their individual risk of being seriously harmed or killed by their partner increases by 75%.
I'm glad you're out there. I really am. It's a very serious issue, and it's really quite sad that we have the kind of abuse that's taking place right here in our backyard. But thank you both for enlightening us on what's going on. And thank you, of course, for watching. We hope you've learned more about the signs of domestic violence and abuse and where you can find both safety and support. If you have any questions or you'd like to know more, visit our website at raleighcw.com and myrdctv.com. I'm Bill LeMay. Thank you for watching Community Matters, and we'll see you next week.